Hey guys, Anime Princess here, and today we're going to go over how to craft a budget wand for a league start on Spark. And then second half of the video, I'm going to go over my gearing and just some generic advice for the Crucible League. So to craft the budget wand, we're going to want to use essences, which are fairly cheap. Essence of Woe is my recommended choice. This gives increased spell damage guaranteed. Another good option is Essence of Dread, which gives us projectile speed guaranteed. And the worst option of all is Torment, and this gives added flat lightning damage to spells, and it's not bad because of the added lightning damage spells. This is actually good, but it's just, we'll go over why this is a second-rate essence in the method. All right, so first off, we need to get a base to craft on. We're going to want a fractured wand. Wands can roll projectile speed. Scepters, daggers cannot roll projectile speed. So we're going to either get fractured projectile speed, try and get like 40 plus probably, or we can get +1 to level of all lightning spell skill gems. The lightning spell skill gems might actually be the better option here, but both of these are very, very good. As for implicits on this filter, we've taken out the really garbage ones, which are minion stuff and fire damage. As for item level, I would say 74 and higher is pretty good. If 83 and higher is cheap, you could go for that, but I wouldn't spend too much extra on this, as this is really intended to be a budget weapon that's going to be very, very powerful with the least amount of currency you can spend. And you can even go lower than item level 74. Mine's actually lower than that. So right now, what are we, like day 6 of the league? It's around 5 to 10 chaos. You could easily get +1 lightning or prod speed. So let's go over the crafting method. Right here, we are looking at all the modifiers we're trying to target. Spell damage. The weighting is very high to get a bad roll and extremely low to get a high roll. So this is the main reason why Essence of Woe is better than Essence of Torment. Because if you look at the Torment weightings of just getting it randomly, it is evenly distributed. It's 800 to get the high tiers, whereas spell damage was only 40. So we will likely be spamming Essence of Woe, which just guarantees us this really hard to get spell damage roll, and trying to hit some of these other modifiers. For +1 level, these are really rare, which is why you might lean towards wanting to get this fractured if it's cheap. The +1 to level of all lightning spell skill gems. Projectile speed weighting is 1000, so it's not actually that hard to hit. Let's assume you're going to use the +1 to level of all lightning skill gems. Then you would just be slamming on, trying to hit added lightning damage spells if possible. You know, maybe don't be too picky on the tier, because we also have to get the suffixes because we don't have the fractured prod speed. So fractured prod speed would be great. We'll likely want to craft either cast speed or global crit multi, because you're not going to hit everything at once. So if you are able to get the prefixes and prod speed, then, you know, think about crafting either cast speed or crit multi. It doesn't really matter. They're both very strong. And an honorable mention for a fourth suffix that you should look out for is crit strike chance for spells. Now, this is evenly weighted and you can get really high amounts. So if you get a high roll of this, it's a good thing to keep, but just keep in mind it's pretty easy to crit cap on Spark, so this is a step below the others. If you're going to do fractured prod speed, we're going to have to accept that we're not going to get a +1 level. So we're going to be rolling Woe to get the spell damage guaranteed and hopefully a high amount of lightning damage. However, since the prod speed is every single time we're going to get that, it's much more likely that we'll be able to get cast speed as well as crit multi, because we'll get one of them and then we'll craft the other. So those are the two options to make a very budget-friendly wand. It took me about 30 to 40 essences, and we rolled something similar to what I have twice. Obviously, spell damage guaranteed with the essence. We got T4 lightning damage to spells. The third prefix is garbage, but we did get crit multi, and we crafted cast speed. So this is pretty good. And I would lean towards using +1 level 2 lightning spell skill gems if it is cheaper than prod speed, or even if they're the same price. But Either one of those methods are fine. All right, now on to my gearing at day 5. So we've done, what have we done? We've done all the watch zones. We need to do Cortex and the Feared still. We haven't done those yet. The gearing setup I have is not meant for bossing. It's meant for mapping. Heatshiver is pretty bad on Spark for bossing because you need to freeze an enemy to gain the bonus damage. And let's just talk about how that works. To inflict a freeze, you want to have a crit and you also want to have really high cold damage. And Spark naturally achieves the crit. We aim for 100% crit chance. However, having a high amount of cold damage requires 2 Call of the Brotherhoods with quality of the elemental catalyst, which is this one. You need to use 40 of these on 20 for each. And you also have to scale your base damage, which means you're going to want to favor stuff like crit multi, increase spell damage, all that stuff over cast speed because you just want to have the biggest hit possible. And, this isn't really necessary for Spark. So Spark really wants the cast speed and that doesn't benefit Heatshiver. So early on in the league, it might not be the best idea to do Heatshiver because, well, first of all, it doesn't help with bosses. And second of all, you really need that big hit. And for beginners, you're probably not going to be able to get enough damage to get the guaranteed freeze. Now, it's going to be really obvious if you're freezing enemies because you're going to see in their animation they're going to get stun locked. So if you're using a Heatshiver and you're just noticing like all the rares are not getting the freeze, like stun lock on them, you are going to want to probably drop the Heatshiver possibly. I'm probably at a point where we are freezing most rares, although some of the tanky essence mobs are not getting frozen still. Average hit is 300,000. This is what we want to scale. We talked about how to craft a budget wand, shield, amulet. These are in the Spark playlists. There's trade links, how to get really cheap gear. This was a 1 chaos amulet. Shield was, 10 to 20C. On stream, we did craft a pair of +2 pierce gloves. Now, to make these gloves, you ideally want to have a base with hybrid resistance with a damage mod. These drop from the Alva reverse incursions, but you can also just buy them on trade. You can get cold resistance with increased damage against chilled enemies. You can get lightning resistance with increased critical strikes against shocked enemies, or you can get fire resistance with added fire damage to ignited enemies. And either of those are fine because we can go to the crafting bench and do change a lightning to cold or change fire to cold, and it's going to change the resistance as well as the damage thing to the best one, which is increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. Now, ideally, you're going to want to have one with some decent suffixes because we can't really fix those ourselves. Mine has Chaos Res and Dexterity, but you can go for Strength, also just like another type of res, whatever you can get. As for the prefixes, we can fix those ourselves. If there's an open prefix, you can use a beastcraft called the Matron Beast, and this adds a meta mod. If your suffixes are full, it guarantees prefixes can't be changed. So it gives you a 2 divine meta mod for much cheaper. And once you have that crafted onto your glove, you just hit it with a Veiled Chaos Orb, and it's going to get rid of all the prefixes, and it's going to give you a Veiled mod. And if your prefixes are full, you can just use an Eldritch Chaos Orb to reroll the prefixes. That also works. So you can do this no matter what. For the Eldritch Chaos, you're going to try and unveil either maximum life with regenerate mana per second, or you can unveil +1 level to socketed projectile gems. Now, the +1 level doesn't matter, but this comes with +1 pierce, and that is what we're looking for. To get the second pierce, you use Lesser Eldritch Ichors, and you just hit it onto the glove until you get +1 pierce. It's easy, +2 pierce. Now, is +2 pierce ideal for Spark? No, you probably want to have another pierce on the medium clusters but +2 Pierce will be fine for early on. Right now I only have +2. For the rest of our gear, well, the body armor, that was crafted with the DPS body armor guide on my channel. Nothing else is really worth mentioning, although I think the gems on here are definitely worth mentioning. We have a glorious vanity. Bathed in the blood by the name of Doriani will give us corrupted soul, and this gives us a lot of energy shield, which is very powerful for Inquisitor because our consecrated ground regens energy shield and life. And what this node does is it lets some damage go through the energy shield onto our life. So whenever we take damage, our regen is essentially doubled if we have energy shield and life. So very strong defensively. And you can pick up one with different numbers, give different modifiers to the node right here and the node right here. Mine gives me cold damage leached as well as some defenses up here. I highly advise you going to the playlist, which tells you how to find the best watchers. I highly recommend you going to the Spark playlist to watch the video on how to get the best Glorious Vanity. It sort of does a step-by-step that will find the best one for your exact build. And that's what we did to grab this one. It's a really big defensive boost. As for the large cluster, Storm Rider gives us 150% critical strike chance and 50% increased damage. It's kind of nuts. So I would try and get Storm Rider on a large cluster if possible. Medium cluster, it's just repeater streamlined. I think I would prefer to have +1 Pierce on here, but this was just what I ended up crafting. And the Enduring Composure is giving us the Endurance Charge. So we have Endurance Charges, Power Charges, Frenzy Charges from the body armor. Build's feeling pretty good. As for the next steps, we are likely going to want to get a Ashes of the Stars because this is going to let us go Petrified Blood, which will boost our hit damage very high because we have Pain Attunement on our wand. And we want that high hit damage so that we can get more out of the Heatshiver. So that's the plan for the next upgrade. And after this video goes up, you can probably catch me live on Twitch. So I will see you there.